our president has been on both sides, on the West and the East. Yeah, it's anybody offering a meeting, he's there.
Hello and welcome to Fanya Mambo Africa, a super exciting day. I mean, I know it's a bit cold outside, but we're warm in here. And I'm so excited, one, because I brought a female thought leader, finally. I feel like I've had so many men sit on that seat, and now there's some difference. Does it feel nice to be here and warm?
It does.
Introduce yourself to our people so that I don't make a weird introduction.
No worries. So my name is Nerima Wako, Ojiwa, and I'm the executive director of Siasa Place.
Siasa Place. Mm-hmm. Okay, I thought you would say you were an analyst or something. So I wasn't sure which one to take.
I know, I saw what you did there. Very clever.
This is for safety purposes for myself. Yeah. So what does Siasa Place do?
So we are an organization that formed in 2015. We are a youth organization. We formed actually on Twitter, now X, and we advocate around issues, so constitutionalism. And we use social media to do digital campaigns, but we also work in 17 counties at the moment, working with CBOs in the communities, youth groups, going through public participation process, just young people engaging with government, collaborating and holding them accountable, utilizing social media to do that. So we'll be turning 10 this year.
10 years already.
Imagine.
When you started this thing when you were 10?
No.
I'm just wondering.
No, I started it when I just got out of university. And I was working in the States in my internship at an organization called Search for Common Ground. And they do peace building. And back then, it was 2012. And Burundi happened, Nkurunziza. He was working on extending his term limit, and there was a lot of upheaval, civil war. And my boss at the time, I was one of 3 Africans in a company of 800, asked, what are the youth of, the country of Burundi thinking? And I was like, I'm Kenyan. and I realized, oh my gosh, my boss can't tell the difference. And, I was with a colleague called Besho, also Kenyan. And I was like, you know what, I want to go back home. I want to figure out what Kenyan young people are doing. I would really like to see what's going on at home. Yeah, so that's how I came back home after school. Yeah.
But how did it feel? Because it's a thing. I think almost every white person thinks Africa is like a small village.
Yeah, no,
you'll be there and then someone asks you, how is South Africa? I'm like, even Kenya, I can't tell you how Meru is.
I would have people asking me, do you know someone called Ahmed from Egypt? And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I lived in the States. I lived in the States for 7 years. I did my undergrad and my master's there. And I really, truly believe it was me living there that made me really have a passion for Africa and really have a passion for Kenya. I believe that's where I connected with my African identity.
Oh, that's good to hear. And of course, Siasa Place is meant for the politics generally and issues around governance. What would you say has been defining for the 10 years of your existence, especially looking at what politics was in 2015 and what politics is in 2025?
Amazing, because like I mentioned, we had started on X, on Twitter, and we started with weekly conversations. We called them Siasa Wednesday. And nobody took us seriously. They were wondering, what group is this that is on this platform that's online? And they seem to be engaging online. It's strange. And it was out of those engagements, we were now being invited to physical forums. That's the first time I was invited to Maseno University. So I remember traveling on a bus, going overnight. You can't even afford to stay there. Yeah. And then as soon as, guys wake up at 9 a.m., 8 a.m., you're in the hall, you're talking about Siasa Place and political engagement. So it evolved. So it grew from an online entity to now a fully fledged NGO working in 17 counties. We have several partners and youth across the country. And a number of the people we've worked with have joined politics, some of them successfully, some of them have disappointed, but it's good they're engaged. And continuing, I think there's even a more vibrant audience today. So for me, it would be seeing how social media would eventually become a meeting point for discussing issues, mobilizing, organizing, and seeing that 10 years ago, I feel great going around and saying, I told you so.
It was going to happen.
So, especially the people who refused to support us, people who are like, but you're just online making noise. I'm just like, I told you. So I feel vindicated, to be honest. Yeah.
And in line with that, I mean, I'll use a very recent example. I think a week or 2 weeks ago, we had the ex-deputy president hosting TikTok Live. And the live had a lot of people for a morning, because it was around, I think, 8 a.m. And with this sort of activism, so to say, or political conversations on these spaces, we still have politicians who say it's just people making noise online. We've even had Moses Kuria tell us people just make noise on Twitter, but...
So there was, I believe it was either 2017 or 2019, I'm not sure, when Senate was doing its second reading on public participation. And at the time, we got young people together and we made recommendations that how can we recognize feedback from social media as true feedback from the public. And I remember being scoffed at, like, why would you do something like that? That is so strange, you know? People have to attend an actual town hall, a physical baraza for us to be able to pick that up as public participation. So what I'm driving at is this is where participation is going to be, and we need to wake up to it. Because when you look at a platform like TikTok, it's barely 5 years old.
Yeah.
And having an audience of an average of 16 years old, it can show you that in the next 5 years, there will be another platform. And it's so fast. Even ChatGPT, when it was launched, it took less than a year to have up to 1 million users. And that's just how fast these platforms come and go, because of just how fast younger generations are adapting to technology. So when you look at a country like Kenya, most of our politicians, most of them, if we were to compare between a celebrity and a politician, they're at the same level in terms of their following. For other countries, not so much. Politicians, especially in Europe, they probably have a following of 500,000. That's the max. But you come here, you can find following of up to 5 million, 4 million, 8 million. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because this is becoming their own handle to share information. They no longer have to rely on mainstream media. So what you're talking about...
But do you think they are alive to the fact that the generation that's voting, especially come 2027, is this generation that they've been dismissing online? And do they understand that now political meetings, barazas, do not have to happen? I don't know, you've gone to Kakamega, Umeita Baraza, you've gone to Meru. Now you just need to tell people, I'll be live and this, and then you can speak to your constituents. Are they awake to that fact and the impact that will have in Kenyan political space?
I think that penetration, especially when you talk about access to a device that you use bundles, smartphones, still a limited number of people have access to that. So I do think that they recognize that social media or access to a smartphone is going to have some effect or impact on whether they're going to be voted or not. Because even when you ask young people where they get their news from, It's from shows like yours. It's from WhatsApp groups. It's from, someone who has a phone to share with you, whether you saw or share on TikTok. Well, before we would rely on notice boards, or we would rely on someone walking through Tao, shouting,
Or
and
news
telling
at
you.
9.
Yeah, or news at 9. A lot of people, even when you ask them, where do you get your news? It's social media. So I think that, they're seeing that those dynamics are changing. And that's why we're seeing a move toward that, even though it's slow. I think politicians are realizing it, because even when, former DP had that meeting with, Mhesh Mathakarua, most people were on TikTok. It was 100K,
Yeah.
100,000 viewers at the time. That shows you that there's interest and it's growing rapidly. So they will change.
And with a CS for ICT, I think it's the whole thing is ICT. The other day he said, if we are going to misuse social media, they're going to shut it down. Then we have places like China who are developing AI and moving the world forward. Then how can we then say a government understands what it is to be young and make proper use of technology if you're threatening people with a switch off?
I know, because I think it's a myopic statement, because right now a lot of people depend on social media even for their livelihoods. So you're talking about, people have TikTok markets, people are using Instagram pages, people are using Facebook, people are sharing information on WhatsApp. And so if you're talking about shutting down social media, you're talking about shutting down people's livelihoods because you don't agree with their opinions and what they say. It's more complicated than that. And I do not think he realizes as well that those same politicians are the ones with the largest followings on these platforms. So even for them to communicate with their constituents, they're not going to be able to. So, we're all going to be affected by such a decision. I think it's a simple statement on a very complicated issue, but it does need some sense of understanding what is freedom of expression and not interfering with the livelihoods of people and the business and the digital economy. Because when you're talking about a population that is majority young, and the president has mentioned several times that he has to create 2 million jobs annually.
And ICT hubs.
Annually? Man, then shutting down the internet is just the wrong thing to do at the wrong time right now.
So in your opinion, having being in the political space for 10 years now as Siasa Place, do you feel like, this might be biased, but do you feel like the governments that we've had, and even the one that we have, has people who understand the needs of the people?
I think it has been a difficult thing to understand young people, even previously. But I think that the administration now has less flexibility in terms of making mistakes. Because I say this, just the amount of unemployment, I don't think they recognize the gravitas of the situation, even when we talk about access to opportunity. So because of that, when we have too much resources being mismanaged, then it means you're taking away an opportunity from somebody or thousands. That was not the case 20 years ago. So they definitely have a steeper hill or mountain to climb. And I don't think this administration realizes the direness of the situation. And that's what worries me, I think they feel that we can solve the problems that have existed since independence, because when you talk about ignorance, poverty, and disease, still there. So they feel that we can fix these problems or treat them the same when it's very, very different. We're in a different globe. We're seeing the global dynamics, even looking at the, global north. They're having their own issues. A lot of countries are looking at self-reliance. And so, Kenya needs to be questioning, how can we survive economically on our own? And what does that look like to float? So I don't think they have emphasized on the regional economic blocks. I don't think they are focusing on special skills, on trade enough, especially within the continent. the Africa free trade is something that should be a priority, but they're not. So I would say the problems are similar, but they're worse. Even when you look at climate change, I mean, look at how it's raining outside right now. Next, we'll be talking about access to food. People will not have food. Farmers will not be able to plant. Harvest will be low. Food will go up. Unemployment is high. Health is high. Access to education is high. So those problems, they're piling up really fast. And I feel like this administration, honestly, they shouldn't be sleeping peacefully at night. Like if I was starving, I would be like, oh my gosh, my problems would wake me up. I would probably last maybe 3 hours of sleep, but I don't think they are realizing that.
The difference is maybe they have no problems. We have the problem, they have no problems. That's probably the difference.
Yeah.
And with this sort of many problems that especially the young people have experienced, then somewhere last year in June, people decided it was enough is enough, and people decided to get to the streets in the famous Gen Z Maandamano. And after that, we had, we had young people who emerged to be more vocal about the issues in terms of getting a voice. People like Kasmuel, people like Morara, there were like several people, Hanifa, all these people who raised these issues. But then again, we are coming to a point where then it's like we are waking up to the reality that everyone has a price tag. And I speak this out of, the case of Kasmuel. And he's been bashed online because people now believe he must have been paid to abandon the cause and jump ship towards ODM. How will young people navigate the whole idea of a price tag? Because the reality is, it's there.
Yeah, there are a lot of desperate young people looking for opportunity because they have families they have to take care of. And with that situation, the good thing is about knowing a person's character, give it time. Like in due time, you will get to know somebody for who they are. And for me, even sometimes I quote on my X platform, I constantly remember Matthew 17:20. You will know a person by their fruit. And so if I am working with someone, even in a business, if there's someone that I know, a friend, you can be able to know the kind of person that they are by the fruit they produce. That's like the kind of businesses they have, their productivity, it's visible. And in due time, if it's something that is not solid, you will see how quickly it goes. We also see that. As quickly as you get it, is as quickly as it goes. And the reason why I'm saying this is I feel, especially young people, is to look inwardly, because I've been doing this work and I've been in rooms with people that I've looked up to. And then I get to know them. And I am just like, what? Yani? Wow. It completely has changed my perspective. And it would be to tell young people to look inward because, I like a saying by Tom Boyer, there's no Superman. There's no Superman who is coming to rescue us. It's up to us. So it's each citizen to take up their own responsibility and find a way to participate in their own way and engage. Because if we have that reliance of following people, personalities, then we will be stuck in the same quagmire that we see in our political parties, where they're not institutions.
The question here would be when we're going for elections mostly. I mean, Nerima will present themselves. They've been, we've seen them on TV 1, 2, 3 times and their arguments. Makes sense.
That's the problem.
Then
arguments.
Nerima comes to my constituency, say in Kirinyaga County. And because I see her on TV, I'm like, okay, she sounds like she's intelligent. She has the heart of the people. And then we give her, fine, let's elect her. She gets into the space and now things are different.
So now what you should be asking is, now Nerima who's on this TV, what has she built? Look at the organization that I have.
She might even have built it and it worked. But then she gets into the space and...
No, if she has built it and it works, then she will be able to lead. There are people who have built things that are not working. They stand there, they are not working. And they're in our government. They are in our government. Multiple hotels that are vacant and dying. Some of them even selling multiple cars. And we are here knowing it's wash. So Kenyans know. Even when you go to villages and you talk about somebody, they'll be like, huyo by the way ni mwizi. Wanajuanga. Like even your own child, you're like, usiende kwa hiyo nyumba. Your familia by the way ni watu wa wachawi. How do we know those things? Intimate details of thieves, of people who practice witchcraft. You're telling me leaders, we cannot do those investigations. I feel what we've done is given politicians a veil where we're like, okay, in our community, we do it. We make sure we sift through. Because members of county assembly, the highest turnover, if you do not perform as an MCA, they will vote you out. In fact, it's as high as 70%. And that's the one at the ward level with the people. So the people know. Now, it comes to these other higher positions where we seem to give them a lot more wiggle room to make serious mistakes. And I think it's about time that Kenyans just came to reality of, hey, hapa, to be blunder. It's bad, but this character development, we need to learn from it and just gather ourselves and start making right decisions from here.
And sometimes I feel like the right decisions, what we look at as the right decisions is people saying, let's say, we've had an older generation of leaders, so we're like, no, you guys, you've stolen so many years and you've never said it's enough. So now what we're going to do, because Sarah is a young person, we're giving her. And case in scenario, we have young leaders in parliament. We have people like Jalas, we have people like Babu, we have people like Peter Salasia. But then again, if we are to put them on a pedestal, are we sure the constituents of these people are happy? Even us who are not members of their constituencies, are we happy with the leadership we have seen from these young leaders?
You know, interestingly, as much as I don't agree with some of the things they say publicly or do, you'd be surprised of the kind of support that they have in their constituencies. Because even for someone like Salasia to come up and criticize the president, it is bold. And for you to do something like that, it's because you're like me, I have a community, by the way, and I feel solid to do that. Like, you would be surprised the kind of support that they have on the ground. And even multiple times I've been told, Babu, here, he has some serious diehard supporters. Even though I might not agree with his politics, you know? So I do think that, you know, young parliamentarians, it's very difficult to come into a party that's already owned by an individual and go against the individual, because it goes back to that personality, celebrity, party leader kind of stuff we're talking about. But if parties were formed as institutions based on credible primaries, and people are able to go there because they have the support from the party and from their community, we would have a different breed of leadership. But because people are able to buy their tickets, then we will have the scum rising to the top rather than the cream rising to the top. And I feel because we're in a period where the entire world is in a crisis economically, we're beginning to see scam performing badly. And when you elect clowns, you know, expect a circus. So that's the result that we are going to have. And I feel a lot of people are frustrated with it and they want it to change.
And with this frustration, we've seen politicians regrouping. Mm-hmm. We've seen Martha meet up with Rigathi Gachagua. I'm not saying they're forming a party together. Of course, we know Martha has her party. The other day we saw Eugene Wamalwa, Kalonzo, and Richard Onyonka, and so many other leaders together doing the same thing. So, because the young people, we are the most in this nation, do we have a chance? Because if these hawks, because they are hawks, regroup and they have the money and power, are we in a position to regroup as young people? Because since after that maandamano, it's like the youth were scattered. Like we had unity of purpose during that time. At the moment, they're scattered.
Good question. I think that the youth are still organizing, just not visibly. And also, June 25th, it was just one thing, reject the finance bill that brought all these different stakeholders and people together. I do feel that we're going to have another moment like that. I feel like we're on the way. I think there's a lot of simmering. There are people who are doing their own individual or group stuff with looks underground, also for safety reasons, because when you pop your head up, you're seeing people being abducted. So I do think that moment will definitely come. When it comes to young people, I like to throw in the equation of, we're thinking about this when things remain constant. June 25th was not a constant. It was a pop-up. It was unpredictable to the political class.
Yeah.
They were confused. They were flat-footed. They didn't know what the heck is going on. They didn't know how to counter it. They didn't know who to contact. They were confused. And years back, and this is also something I constantly repeat, I had a very deep conversation, with a senior politician. And he tells me, the problem with you young guys, you don't have the money. Like, we have worked really hard to galvanize this resource.
Stealing.
To keep our status quo. So we steal and collect and all this money to make sure that the field, the game we're playing, the rules stay the same. And so when he looks at me, he says, the only way that, your generation or younger can change this game is if you're playing chess on the table, is if you flip the table, you completely stop playing the game, or you change the game. If you find a way to change the game, then you have us. June 25th changed the game. Social media, mobilizing, almost invisibly, and then organically. And so for me, it's an encouragement, because what we're seeing is 2 years before an election, when you see them trying to now form coalitions, they're scared, they're nervous, they don't have control. So it means what they're trying to do is galvanize the populations the way they know how. And they're doing it in a space that has changed. So I do think that there's room for a pop-up, another one, another one is coming soon. So I'm excited, yeah.
And one of the ways, this would not be the best for anyone to speak about, but I'll talk about anyway. One of the ways would be what we saw in West Africa. There were coups. There was a coup in Burkina Faso, there was a coup in Mali, there was a coup in Niger. And as we speak, these countries are doing better than us guys who are very diplomatic nations, right? When you look around Africa, one of the most celebrated leaders is Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traore, for some reason. And yet he's a junta, he's not democratically elected. When you look at Kenya, do we have such a chance?
So,
and by the way, government, I'm not advocating for coups. It's good I make it clear. I'm just being, it's a discussion.
So even when you look at those countries, Africa went through about 9 military coups in a span of 5 years. That's a lot.
Yep.
And even, when you look at the situation in Mozambique, there are things that are happening currently that are quite similar. And there was a study done by The Guardian, I think it was in 2022, I believe, where they measured the state of democracy globally. And so globally, young people do not believe in democracy. It's declining. And it declines with every year. You see? It declines with every year. And, they are questioning why. And, looking at Africa, a lot of the countries that were having a military coup, the leaders were below the age of 40. Like Ibrahim, who we've mentioned, he's 38. So it begins to question, maybe, young people are saying, hey, I want to be involved in this leadership, but when I use the systems and processes that are there, I can't. So they're the only option is through the military. And it's interesting conversations online where, even you'll see people commenting, the god of...
Yeah. He's
Please,
not
Kenya. He's not visiting Kenya. Huh? Please, hear our prayers.
When will our prayers?
So even, on social media, when conversations are around that, it's fascinating because the one thing that's connecting a lot of these countries is people are tired of the corruption. People are tired of the opulence. And people are just tired and frustrated with the political status quo not listening to the public. People, they feel like they've lost their dignity. And that's something I can repeat for Kenya.
Yeah.
That's something I can repeat for Kenya. But I do think that, the US looks at Kenya as a project of democracy. Like, we're that country that has had elections consistently. Whether they are fair, that's a whole other debate. Whether they are credible, a whole other debate. But to have those peaceful transitions, were viewed as, oh no, they can't possibly.
Nice people.
No, yeah, because, democracy is our experiment. And so it needs to work in Africa. And Kenya, because of our record historically, we are one of those countries that has consistently changed presidents and continue to do so for a number of decades. So I feel that it would be difficult too. I feel there would be a lot of people who would be against it. But I wouldn't say it's impossible.
I like that you're saying a lot of people would be against it. It's, there's usually no consultation per se.
The situation is a crisis.
It's like 25th June. There was no consultation. Will you guys... Anyway, let's move away from that. Something else that also is in line with that. We've seen what is happening in Congo. We've seen mercenaries from France, Bolivia, I don't know where, being like when the M23 went to Congo, these guys decided we're going back to Rwanda and we're exiting and going back home. Why is the West so invested in ensuring that Congo does not know peace? Because it's the West, it's just the truth.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, all these white people are not African, but we've seen them board planes. So what were they fighting for in Congo?
You're going to show my Pan-African biasness.
Which is okay. It's a safe space.
It's a main region near Goma and Saki, and minerals, tin, copper, gold. A lot of the minerals that we find in Congo, I mean, we need it even for our cell phones. And it's about, having control. So as much as countries are independent, we still have foreign influence and infiltration that people will not mention. I mean, like if you even look at a country like ours, we have US military bases in so many counties. These are some of the things that, the US will negotiate for and push for and make sure they have a budget for. It comes to defense. So even when we talk about the strength of countries, it's about their resource and it's about their military. So to be able to have a strong military, you have to have the resource to afford the strong military. So even when you're talking about all those countries, when you are able to have regions in chaos, then you're able to rampantly steal. You're able to make sure you sell some of those minerals at low cost. You don't have to be held accountable. And, one of the first things that happened in Mali when they were kicking out the French, or still kicking out the French, was to make sure that they take over the mines, make sure that they control the gold, the extraction, and the profits go back to their countries. So we've seen the amount of looting that happens in Africa and the illicit financial flows, but unfortunately we don't have strong enough governments to protect Africa's resource. And that's why Congo is the mess that it is, and it's unfortunate.
So, and that's just the case of Congo. When you look at Africa as a whole, do we have, except for the Sahel region now, who've kicked out the French, because the region was French-dominated mostly, and of course American bases were closed. Besides the Sahel region, do we have leaders who have the balls to say no to the West at this point, even in our own country, Kenya?
The ones who did previously were all assassinated. So history has shown us that when you make waves, you're the first to die. So, and it doesn't surprise me how protected, when we look at Mali's leader, he travels with a brigade of literally a human force field. And he's had, I think, up to almost more than 20 assassination attempts. So it's not easy to lead and push against the grain. But I do think that we're getting to a point globally where there's a lot of unrest in other countries. When you're talking about Ukraine, talking about Gaza, and we're not even talking about Sudan here nearby. We've not even talked about Congo, where what normally happens during crisis, the first thing countries do is to protect themselves. And so the US has already started that conversation by putting America first. I will not be surprised if other countries follow suit. We've already seen the right-wing wave of Europe, Germany, struggling with putting parliament together, the Bundestag, France as well, changing prime ministers here and there. Netherlands votes going toward the right. I mean, when you just look at the world, we are seeing people now looking internally and trying to figure out we need to take care of our own. So Africa will have to eventually take care of their own.
That's very idealistic, because when I look at the Congo story, yesterday night, President Kagame said, this thing of peace, I'm not into it. I don't even understand what you guys are pushing around here.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Felix stands strong. We want them. Our own president said that he spoke to Macron, someone who colonized the West region to sort an African problem. Are we genuinely working towards leaders who have African interests at heart?
They do not, but our own president has not had the best track record in terms of he has positioned himself as the darling of the West. And that he has met a lot of backlash with African countries. But also you didn't mention the young leaders, like even though when you go to Senegal with Sonko, you're seeing the partnership that they're having also with Ibrahim. Like there's a sort of younger generation crop of leaders that are thinking about changing the dynamics of resource flow, that now older presidents are not involved in it. Because all the presidents, okay, not all, but most of the ones you mentioned, we know their histories of their countries. We know with Rwanda, we know with what's going on with Congo. But it's more, the attack was personal in terms of the framing of the statements that were made. And I do think that it's a high risk tension situation. And I don't know if our president is the best mediator. That's going to be challenging. And these are some of the things that when you talk about shuttle diplomacy, these are some of the things that honestly Raila Odinga was really good at, and why he was respected in the continent because of the number of fights he has minimized in history, including South Africa, and why he has a very close relationship with Cyril Ramaphosa. So I do see that there is a gap because it's a skill. I mean, it's also because even when you talk about people like Museveni who have been there for as long as we've been born, and you're dealing with that sort of generation, how you deal with conflict, it's going to show. We're going to know whether our president is a negotiator or not, and he seems to be struggling with that.
And I know it's a struggle because Felix refused to join that meeting already, the president of Congo. And they're looking at Kenya as being biased because we are speaking like we support Rwanda already. I mean, President Ruto was also rejected in the Sudan peace negotiation. I don't know. It's not. That's just a fact. It's not. It has nothing to do with me. But I remember Kalonzo negotiated for Sudan some times back.
Yes.
So if we are able to raise such leaders, then maybe the continent will change. And I feel the young people, the young leaders of West Africa, I mean, they've taken over through coups, yes, except for the Senegal president who was elected. But he can't work alone.
True.
The guy is young. I'm sure I don't think they're in good terms, like 100% with the Nigerian president, because even the way of thinking of the old vis-a-vis the new, the younger people is a bit different. I mean, some old people have wisdom, some do not.
No, they don't.
So it's a very tricky place to be.
Yeah.
And how do you think this whole idea of President Ruto speaking to Macron will affect Raila Odinga's candidacy? Because it's the West African nations, really, most of them don't have anything to do with France.
It's a very, very dicey situation, considering that the time frame we're talking about is quite short.
A few days.
Yeah. I mean, the timing of things. I mean, I just feel like with this administration, the timing has been almost divine. Like, when things
Really
can go
now?
bad. I mean, you're just like, what? Yani, that can happen. Like
The wrong timing.
The wrong timing. Like, it has happened multiple times for him. Where the universe is just conspiring to make things difficult. So, I mean, it's a very, very sensitive situation in terms of, people can flip and change their mind because of how he deals with the situation. And I mean, Macron is struggling in his own country. Yep. And, because when we're looking at the African Union, there's a lot of conversation because of immigration. We're seeing very strict immigration laws being developed in Europe. We are seeing America deporting. You've seen the stories of Kenyans being afraid that they're going to be deported. Some have already started being deported. So when people are coming home, you have to think, okay, people have nowhere to run to, because even the work that we do with young people, it's like I would rather go out because there's better opportunities and I can send the money home. But now even going out is tough. So they are here. So it's something that in terms of his relations, he's going to have to work at. I feel the dependency on the West and the East. That's the thing. Our president has been on both sides. On the West and the East. Yeah, it's anybody offering a meeting is there. And these are the things where it's going to become more and more difficult to do. He's going to have to begin to have a stand, and also for people to understand his stand. Because historically, Kenya has not made the best choices always. Even when we talk about Uganda, with Idi Amin, there are times where we have remained silent in times of crisis. And so even, I've seen Julius Malema a few times, basically blame our leadership for not being Pan-African enough because of history. We normally stand on the side of business rather than friendship or rather than relations. And I don't know if President Ruto is the one that's going to change that impression of us. I don't know if he's going to show that we're a more open country, because Kenya is a safe haven. You'd see, people would come here, refugees.
Maybe just say used to be.
Used to be, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And it's very sad when you're seeing, people being abducted here, from activists from other countries. I mean, that is just, we're getting to a level where we're concerned. I'm concerned, even for the kind of work that we do, in terms of the kind of position we're taking as a country.
Really, a lot to think about for the leaders of this nation. With a Trump presidency now what next? Like, where are we looking now? Because Trump already said, America first. Whatever other things, Africa, that's your problems.
I think we're definitely already seeing a lot of change in terms of the kind of aid that comes to the country, where, a lot of people, we really depend on American aid in our health. Our health ministries really depend on American aid. And we're really going to see that, touching home. It's going to get into our homes. People that we know directly are going to be affected and impacted. And I don't think that has hit people yet, but we will see it. And with the Trump administration, I feel a lot of decisions are being made very fast, yet government is very large, and decisions normally are very bureaucratic and slow. And so there's a lot of, signing into like law and then it's rescinded, that kind of confusion in the beginning is going to happen, especially as Trump finds his footing. But I know that even in his speech, he talked about really admiring McKinley, who was president, 1847 to 1901. And even when you look at that time period of the kind of person that he looks up to, because he completely changed the economy of America and took over territories, but he was also quite violent. I mean, in terms of wars, stopping them, but it took a lot to do that. And we're in an age where countries are independent. Like, you can't go and say you're conquering lands, how he was talking about Greenland. So I think that there's going to be a lot he would want to do, but it's not going to be as simple as he expected it to be. And I know a number of people are quite nervous with just how fast changes are coming. And it's going to be that way, especially for this first year he's in office. Yeah.
And I'm sure Kenya will suffer a lot.
Yeah.
Essentially because of various reasons and the amount of money that US has been putting here. Mm-hmm. So also in line with his presidency, then how we do our budgeting essentially as Kenya. And this is something I never understand, how the ministry, for instance, Ministry of Health, has a lot of programs that are run by a foreign. Yet the former president one day said we lose 2 billion per day.
I know.
If, and this is just if, for instance, he was to say total aid in Kenya ends today, would we survive?
No.
Why?
Because when we transitioned into a mid-income country, it basically meant that our country, our governments could now go into agreements with other governments to support certain institutions. So you will find, like, the Americans, they were supporting our health. They were also supporting police, IPOA. Yeah. So institutions that are fundamental for functioning of countries. And unfortunately, we have a lot of collection, but then when it comes to how that collection is dispersed is where the challenge is. And I'll say no because, working in Nairobi, I would go to town and sometimes you even forget what is the toll number. Say, if you have a car and you drive to town, sometimes it's the G star 647 and then you're told, no. Hiyo ilikuwa ya Sonko, sasa imekuwa star 2 what. And you're like, how are we changing? Because the governor changed. Like, this is a county government system. It should be the same account, no matter who is sitting in the governor's seat. It shouldn't be that Sonko's account.
Yeah.
No. And so for me, that's why I say no, because we have a lot of loopholes of resources that are just not going to the right places. And even a report that we did about Ajira centers, and we went to one center in Mombasa, I believe, either Mombasa or Kakamega, but in Mombasa, and the center is supposed to have 30 computers. This is a digital hub. Then you go there, you're seeing 3. So you're like, Allah, see, they're supposed to be 30 here. You're even asking, ziko wapi? And then they're like, sinizi. You're like, no.
They were 30.
They were 30.
According to a report.
According to our report, 30 were bought. 30 should be here. Why are we seeing 3? And then you go, you write your report, you only see 3, You publish your report, hey, phone calls are made, You're told to come back. Rudi tena.
Zimefika 30 this time. They're miracle.
Miracle. Hey? And then you ask, where were they? Zilikuwa tu kwa storage. Okay? So that is the case, and I will tell you that is something that happened. And even with dialysis machines, okay? And people need dialysis to live. But someone has decided that they're theirs, okay? And they will sell them, resell them, or they will keep them. And you're seeing people have hospital beds in their houses, okay? So if we can fix those problems, then we can survive, because we're just losing a lot of resources to things that quite seriously we shouldn't be. But because of those loopholes, no, we cannot. We cannot survive at the moment if those loopholes continue to exist.
So do we stay open with those loopholes and still cry for help?
That's what's happening.
As a country?
Yeah, that's what's happening. That's what's happening at the moment. So you're finding, I'm even hearing how people are paying for offices. 1 year, the office is like 300,000 shillings a month. Government. And no one is in that room. Hakuna mtu anatumia. That. The amount of just useless spending that exists. And I think there was a time that, Devin D alluded to it. He was just like, the amount of expenditure in government is just so much. Like, we just lose so much on a daily basis. That's just something that just needs to be reduced and nipped in the bud. Otherwise, we will never be able to solve these challenges.
Didn't they say it in this term or the previous government? Because in this term, the things he's been telling people on Twitter are not like, no.
No, previously, before he became a bit too...
When he was a good man. I'm not saying he's bad. I don't know him in person, so... What was I? There's a question I wanted to ask that has disappeared on... Oh, yes. Now, when they see you or us talk about these things now, they'll say probably... Maybe for me, they'll forgive me because I am hosting you. But for you, they will say you're paid to do the sort of activism you do. Is it true?
No.
You're not paid?
I have a salary. I work.
No, not like a salary, but you see, we've even seen it with Boni. He's paid to demonstrate.
No.
I am not saying he's paid. I am saying this is what people accuse him of.
Yeah.
So are you also accused of such things?
No, mine is a bit different because of my political name, because of Wako, because of my family. It's a bit different. And also...
So they'll just say you're a rich kid running your thing.
Yeah.
But is it true in the NGO world, you people are just paid to push agendas that maybe sometimes Americans want, sometimes the government wants?
Not my organization,
but it's
not mine. I think that there are some. But not mine. Yeah. For me, I'm all about results. I'm all about partnership, collaboration. And also it's a big reason why I don't have offices in the counties. We identify partners to work with, which are community-based organizations, and they run their stuff. They do an amazing job. I think there are enough amazing people across this country that it doesn't have to be me doing this. And so we really push for decentralizations of actions and introducing these CBOs to funders, supporters, for them to go and run their thing. And so we have a number of partners that I can firmly say that that's what we do. And even on our platforms, we will always highlight our partners that we partner with, and there are offices in the counties. We call them offices of the citizen. People are able to go and work from there. And, people, we can bring resources together, have an office space, they go and work. So it doesn't have to be me, it doesn't have to be Siasa Place. But I do feel that even those people who say they are being paid to do that, I think it's tough because sometimes, you look at the situation and you're like, why don't you have that same energy and aggression toward people that you actually pay with your taxpayer money? Like they are roaming around doing foolish things, dancing on stage. And
moving with helicopters.
Yeah. Someone was coming to a funeral, almost blowing away tents, coming and spending, you don't know how much money and carbon they are using to do that trip. And we say nothing.
Renovating.
We say nothing.
State House.
You see, I feel like that's a misplaced anger. And I feel that we need to focus on the people who we actually put there we actually used our resources in taxes to put there and hold them accountable. I feel Kenyans have lost focus if they're so bothered by other people who they didn't hire.
But I feel like sometimes the government, on purpose, will make sure they'll have so many things so that your attention is not on like health.
That's true.
So we'll make sure education, health, technology, like there are so many things to talk about that by the end of the day, you don't even know what you're supposed to focus on as a citizen. True. But also, I think citizens need to deal with their misplaced anger and focus on where the taxes are. In your field, also something that I feel would be dangerous, and we've seen it, people who are against, especially governments, county government leadership. We saw Sniper who was killed in Meru. We saw the guy who was sodomized in Mombasa and all this. How do you deal with such issues? And even for you as a person, does it mentally drain you, or how do you handle that?
No, it is draining. It's concerning. It's tough because even recently you saw the protests that were happening in Molo, Nakuru, when you know people, like I know people who are close, and it can really mess up with your mind, with your whole being. It's even very hard for people to come out of the house and be normal. I mean, I feel like we crossed into another state after June 25th as far as security goes. You know, we can be here, and I've said this before years ago where I said, I think Kenyans cope through humor. So, you know, we can be making jokes about, you know, people being abducted. If you say that, you'd be abducted. Or when I say a Subaru, I have anxiety. That is trauma, my friend. Like, if you're walking and you see a Subaru and you have to gasp, that is trauma. And I don't think people realize how traumatized and sick they are for people to have a common fear, and we don't really talk about it or recognize it. We cover it with humor. And I think it can't continue for long. It gets to a point where you're like, okay, actually, this is not normal. Like, I don't know if I want this to be my normal behavior. Because I've been in countries where dictators are in power, and you can be talking to somebody, and all of a sudden, when they're talking about something important, they start whispering to you. Like we can't. And you even look at them like, hey, Kwani,
what happened?
What happened? What happened? Yeah. You know, but for them, that's normal behavior. You leave that country like, what? Yani, they didn't even notice that they started whispering, or they'll even stop you mid-conversation like, hey,
we can't talk about that.
Yeah, they might be watching. I mean, I personally would not like to live my life that way, and definitely would not want to have my son live in a country that way. No. And so we need to speak up. We cannot continue to be quiet as the situation begins to normalize. I don't agree with it.
It's not even right anyway.
No.
The universal human rights dictates people should enjoy the freedom of speech.
Yeah. As
we conclude, how is Uncle Wako? I think the longest serving AG, was he?
Yeah.
You know, I grew up knowing Amos Wako was the Attorney General. Like it was like the way boy was a president.
I know. Trust me, I know.
How is he? He's disappeared out of.
He's there.
I'm sure even Gen Z don't know he exists. It has millennials.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to show him this clip.
Please do. Tell him we miss his smile. He was always smiling.
Oh yeah, he's okay. I was with him the other day. He's fine. He watching. We were talking about the launch you were mentioning with Jubilee and Kina, all those people. Observing, just finding the space dynamic. We have conversations. He's still quite engaged, but behind the scenes, but he's okay. Honestly, that's the way it should be.
You disappear.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in politics for that long, It's
Obama
okay.
is always...
Yeah, but he's young, like take a break. Like sometimes, take a break sometimes. Sio lazima. Like,
out of curiosity,
sio
though,
lazima.
that's true. See, Ata also leave space for more young people. Out of curiosity, though, I believe countries that have prospered, people who've served in governments offer a lot of advice. That's why we hear like prominent so-and-so, the days of Kofi Annan when there was all those are, it takes the older generation to bring some time sense too.
Yeah.
Do they have like a forum where those people who served then sort of like an eminent person's
I don't know how much.
or something?
I do know that they still engage. In fact, in serious situations, they are contacted and they do share their views. So they're always accessible, approachable. So I mean, even with me, he's always happy to just sit down and have tea and talk through things and just also share some insights that we wouldn't have unless someone writes it in their biography, in terms of things that happened in history and understanding why certain institutions, or rather the kind of path Kenya is in at the moment, or where we have come from. I feel you're right that element of intergenerational understanding is important, but also when you talk about young people leading, it's a good partnership to have. And we talk about Kenya, and it would be a wonderful thing if we had the Kenya that we want, where we're all working toward that Kenya together, rather than viewing generations as threats.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel that line is quite thin. Yeah.
Okay. As we conclude, your closing remarks to our viewers, I want to believe they've gotten a lot of nuggets from you that probably they didn't know. And also, just tell Uncle we want to have a conversation with him. Please make sure you show him this part. Hi, Uncle Wako. I want to host you on our show. Thank you for agreeing to come.
Mm-hmm. I will definitely ask. I know he's very reserved. It's also difficult to find a lot of his interviews. But I'll definitely ask. I've enjoyed the conversation. Definitely not what I was expecting at all.
What were your expectations?
We went deep.
What were your expectations, though?
Sometimes I feel like conversations remain very nationalistic, and then sometimes quite shallow. We can end in debates of personalities and comments.
Yeah.
But I really like this conversation because, we were able to put a whole region, in the conversation perspective.
And that's why everyone should come to Alpha House. We are fun people.
I enjoyed it.
That's good to hear. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, I enjoyed hosting you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you were telling our viewers something as we conclude. Emma, you wrapped like that?
No. Oh. I will say, I think my wrap-up is, find something that you're passionate about. I do feel that everything is political. That's why we call ourselves Siasa Place. There's always a political angle to everything. So find it and find what is your passion around it. And don't let anyone judge you that because you look a certain way, or you're in a certain clique or group, whatever, you have the mind and you have the capability to discuss national issues and be concerned about them and care about what is on the table. Let no one tell you, this is, I was there. No, I think we need to go against that rumor.
Fantastic. We are the Wazee now. Now we are changing conversations. We are the Wazee. We are changing that type for sure. So, Nerima, it was so much fun having this conversation with you. I've enjoyed myself too. And I mean, it was good to hear things I have not heard you speak about in other forums. And yeah, maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much. So to you, Alvia, thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I hope you also enjoyed the conversation. If you did not, just come back. You'll enjoy another one. But I'm sure you did. And if you've not been subscribed by now, just do it. We are fun. She said it. She stamped it. So please do subscribe and see you on the next episodes.